Welcome to the OK Let's Learn podcast. This is two family-friendly podcasts in one where we dive into tons of interesting topics, and another where we just dive into tons of interesting books and stories. My name is Kevin O'Keefe. So today, let's learn all about polo. Not water polo. Yes, polo on horses, on a great green field. Yes, high society, wealth, horses, but it's so much more than that. It's an American institution, but really is it? What's its history? What are the rules? Who plays it? What equipment do you need? There's so much to know and understand. And yes, you're not going to be an expert at the end of this episode, but will you know a lot more about this game? And hopefully, will you want to learn more? Yeah, that's the idea. And that's the purpose of all these episodes. So, let's learn all about polo. Number one, I will tell you, I was exposed to it early on. I was dating a girl in Greenwich, Connecticut, and this was early 80s when I was at college. And yeah, we used to go by this field, and then a few times we went and we stayed and we watched the game. And you talk about an experience, a thrill, and just something that most people have never seen, witnessed, watched. It's so worth the time. A beautiful day out there in the country. Hey, when you think about it, it's another athletic competition, but it's not horse racing, right? It's not field hockey. It's not lacrosse, but you have everything. You've got teamwork. You've got these beautiful animals that are up and down the field. And then, of course, you have the strategy of trying to score goals, which ultimately makes it similar to so many other sports around the world. So what is it? Like I said, it's a team sport. It's played on horseback. Two teams compete against each other. There's 4 players on each team. Each rider carries this long-handled mallet, and the idea behind the game is you're trying to hit a small white ball through a goal, and yes, whoever scores the most goals by the end of the match is the winner. Sounds familiar, right? But there's a lot of differences. Number one, the field is 300 yards long. It's 160 yards wide, and yes, they actually play indoors, which we will get to. It's actually called arena polo. The goals are like 8 yards apart. They're like these foam posts. They're stuck into the ground, and there's no crossbar. There's just these 2 poles sitting opposite each other. They're about 10 feet tall. And yeah, when you score, it doesn't matter how high the ball goes. As long as it goes through the post, it's a goal, which you can imagine can be kind of difficult, right? It doesn't, if it rolls on the ground, fine, goal. Goes way up in the air. As long as it goes through the imaginary post, it's a goal. And yeah, who's keeping track of this? Well, you have these 2 umpires who ride directly on the field on horseback, going up and down. They call the fouls and they manage, obviously, the gameplay. And then there's these goal judges when you play outside, right? They're the ones who decide if it's a goal, and they wave a flag over their heads to signal that, yeah, it is a goal. So let's talk about the history of this game. Yeah, it's one of the world's oldest team sports. It's 2,000 years old. We don't know who invented it, right? But here's the bottom line. Horse riding people in Central Asia and ancient Persia were really some of the first people to take up this game. And when I mention ancient Persia, we're talking about most of modern day Iran today. And when it first started, it wasn't about, obviously, just playing a game. It was associated with training the cavalry. Cavalry being soldiers on horses. With modern warfare, you had soldiers that had to navigate riding a horse and using a weapon as well, right? Think about all the skills that are involved. A cavalry soldier needed to control his horse, as I mentioned, at high speed, change direction quickly, watch other riders, And yeah, listen to all these different weapons that they could use on horseback. You had the lance, which was basically a spear. You had a long composite bow. You had a saber. You had a javelin, and even these battle axes. So you had to be really proficient on horseback with using a weapon. And eventually, obviously, yes, it became a game. Once the Persian kings and the emperors saw how thrilling, right, that this practice was with working with the military units, they turned it from a drill into this national sport, and they called it shogun. The Persian royal courts, they built fields, they established rules, and yeah, there was these massive matches. They called them the sport of kings. And this was, generally speaking, obviously during peacetime. Women played in the matches, and the Persian origins actually go back to 600 BC. So this is really 2,600 years ago. But the modern sport, it really started taking shape in India during the 1800s. British soldiers and tea planters, they saw that local people were playing this game mostly in northeastern India. And of course, they got fascinated with it. So the British military officers began playing it themselves. They organized clubs, and they eventually brought the game back to England. In 1875, there was this club, Hurlingham, in London. It basically set up all these rules, and then from there, modern polos pretty much spread around the world. It reached the United States in the 1870s, and yeah, it took hold in Argentina. And listen to this, Argentina today is generally considered the world's great polo powerhouse. I bet you didn't know that. Most of the best players come from Argentina. The best teams come from Argentina. And yeah, the best horses come from Argentina. Now, you may be asking, why this country? Well, after it was introduced, it had everything that allowed it to develop into a top-tier sport. You had unlimited land, this flat grasslands that they built the polo fields. And with that, they were able to raise a massive amount of herds of horses, right? And the cost of the land was such that, again, it could spread. And then there was this legendary cowboy culture where kids were riding horses from an early age. So over time, all these factors contributed to the sport being dominant and, yes, developing and raising the horses that were top tier playing this game. And hey, the Olympics, this is when Argentina made its name. And polo was part of the early Olympics when it got started, the modern Olympics, back in 1900. The sport was dominated by the United States and Britain, but then in the 1924 Paris Olympics, Argentina shocked the world by beating both the United States and Great Britain. They won the gold medal, and then in the 1936 Berlin Olympics, they destroyed the entire competition, the entire field. They won their second gold medal. And the final match was a 11-0 blowout against Great Britain. This is when they arrived on the scene. Unfortunately for Argentina and really polo overall, that was the last time it was an Olympic sport. It was just the logistics and the cost, getting horses to the matches all around the world. It was just too much for nations. So that was the last time they were in the Olympics, but it continued at that point to really take off. So let's talk about the rules of the game. Very briefly, I mentioned you got 4 players on each team. So the number one player is basically the gentleman or the lady that's scoring the goals, right? Up front, offense. Number 2 is backing up number 1. And yes, he's got defensive responsibilities too. But number 3 is the basic playmaker, very similar to like the midfielder in soccer, right? He's almost like the quarterback. But number 4 is the primarily defensive player. And the game is divided into, they don't call them quarters. Listen to this. They're called chukkers or chukkas, it can be pronounced. So it's basically Polo's version of a period or a quarter or an inning, maybe if you want to talk about that. But typically there's 6 chukkers, with each one lasting about 7 minutes. And you're saying, well, that's not too long. Well, it's all about the horses. Think about how much work that they're doing. So typically, each team will bring 6 to 8 horses to a match. After each team scores, the team switches directions, right? So that's all about there not being an unfair advantage, especially when you're outside with the wind or the sunlight, right? And here's one rule that you got to know about this game. It's called the line of the ball. When someone hits the ball, imagine an invisible line continuing along the direction that the ball travels. That line creates a kind of right of way because, again, you got to protect the horses, right? You can't be just coming right in front of a player once that player hits the ball, right? That is not allowed. It's almost like the metaphor if you got 2 cars driving along a highway. You need to stay in your lane, right? That protects the riders, it protects the horses, and allows the game to be played without there being collisions. Now, players can make contact. They could ride alongside another player and legally push them away from the ball using his horse. That's called a ride-off. But, like I said, dangerous angles and collisions that are reckless aren't allowed. So polo is definitely physical, but the rules are designed to protect, obviously, riders and the horses. The horses are called polo ponies. Even they're not. They're large horses, the thoroughbreds, right? They're not little ponies. But early on, the name stuck because there was a rule where there was horses could only be a certain height, and that was the height of a pony, so the word stuck. Now let's talk about the mallet. It looks a little strange if you've never seen one. It's right, so it's got the long, thin shaft. It's almost kind of like a golf club, right? But it's long, it's like a walking stick. But the head at the bottom, right? It almost looks like a croquet mallet. But unlike the croquet mallet, the 2 ends of the head don't look the same. One is fairly flat, it's blunt, right? But the other, it's tapered and it's cut at an angle. And when you hit the ball, you don't hit it from each end like you do in the little game of croquet on the field. No, you hit it in the center of the mallet. The one end is tapered partly so that the mallet can swing close to the ground without catching it or digging it into the grass. And so it just makes the ability to hit that ball so much smoother, right? A lot cleaner swing. The ball, it's hard. It's small. It's only about 3 to 3.5 inches across. And it's almost like a combination of a field hockey ball, which is definitely harder, and a lacrosse ball, which is softer. It can hurt, right? It's made of hard plastic. And yeah, players wear helmets. They wear boots, obviously knee protection, and the horses themselves, they use protective equipment on their legs. It's a fast, physical sport, and yeah, all of what I said leads to a lot of injuries. Just look at the players and trying to lean over that horse. You're just talking about arm injuries, shoulder injuries, back injuries. Are you kidding me? So you have to be in shape to play this game. Now, how is it organized? I'm sure you're thinking, this is not a sport that's on TV, right? Most people, I would argue, haven't ever seen a polo match. So it's not like the NBA. It's mostly organized around clubs and tournaments. Most are financed by people that have a lot of money. They're known as patrons. And up front, what's interesting is a lot of times you'll have highly skilled professionals and people that have money that are not necessarily obviously playing the sport all the time. They're amateurs, but they have the wherewithal to get teams together and they can play. The amateurs and the professionals can actually play together on the same team. Players are given handicap ratings. Listen to this. It's based on their ability. The very best possible rating is 10 goals, and only a tiny number of players ever reach that level. So a polo handicap doesn't mean a player will score 10 goals that we know goals as. It's an overall measurement of that player's skill and value. Together, the handicaps of the 4 players, you put them together, you add them up, and you get the team's handicap. So tournaments can then establish kind of limits so teams can compete at relatively, the same level. And I mentioned it's expensive. Think about it. Yes, it's very expensive. One player needs several highly trained horses. You need food for the horses. You need doctors to take care of the horses. You need transportation, stables, right? Equipment, training, club fees, tournament expensive, and possibly professionals. So you put all that together and your whole team is costing a lot of money. That's why historically this sport has been associated with the royalty. Well-to-do, right? Businessmen, celebrities, aristocrats, you name it. But here's the important distinction. You do not have to be enormously wealthy just to try the game. Get involved with the game. There are polo schools and clubs where beginners can take lessons using horses supplied by the club. You can learn how to ride. You can hold the mallet. Everything about getting involved with the sport is just like any other endeavor. If you have the will, yes, you can get involved. And there's also arena polo, which I really haven't talked about. It's indoors, right? It's obviously a smaller field, and there's 3 players in a team. And you don't need really that much money, right? You still need a lot of money, but it's a lot less land, fewer horses, and it really makes the sport a lot more accessible. Where is it played? Hey, we mentioned all over the world, but here in the United States, there's pockets of communities throughout the United States. I have one great friend and their family. Everyone's getting involved in playing it here in Northwest Jersey. But believe it or not, South Florida is one of the biggest hubs. Wellington, which is down near West Palm Beach, is really one of the biggest communities of polo in the country. It actually hosts a lot of competitions, including the U.S. Open Polo Championship. It's played in California, Texas, and colleges, right? It's played by 30 different colleges across the country. Some of the premier college programs today, it's Texas A&M. Historically, it's been Yale. Cornell is a big program, Princeton, and yes, University of Virginia too. So whether there's professional tournaments, amateur clubs, one of the interesting parts of this game is how spectators get involved. During halftime, the people are invited onto the field very often for this tradition called the divot stomp, right? Well, those of you who play golf, you know what a divot is. It's basically a piece of grass and then soil that's basically torn up, right? And when you're playing golf, it's torn up from the club. But in this case, it's all loosened up and torn apart from the horses galloping all over. So people will literally go out onto the field and cover up the divots. Now, a lot of you, when you hear the word polo, a lot of people don't think of the sport right away. What's amazing is that polo is now become so synonymous in our country with Ralph Lauren and the company he created, right? You won't think of the sport. You'll think of the clothes and the collared shirt. So much so today, people don't call them collared shirts. They'll call them polo shirts. That's how indelible this company that Ralph Lauren created around this sport. And the origins go back in terms of the shirt that he created. What he noticed was that polo players were wearing these tennis shirts, the Lacoste shirts with the alligator on the shirts that a lot of you may know, right? That was originally created for tennis players. And what he noticed is that, polo players, they weren't comfortable. And a lot of them started wearing the Lacoste t-shirts. Ralph Lauren wasn't raised in the polo world. He grew up in the Bronx. So he started his fashion business in 1967, and yeah, he chose the name Polo, right? The choice was brilliant. Think about it. The sport, the horses, the tradition, elegance, country clubs, wealth. It was high class, upper middle class lifestyle. He wasn't selling polo, the sport. He was selling the image. In 1971, the polo player logo began appearing on all of his clothing, and in 1972, he introduced the famous polo shirt. So yeah, that logo with the polo player, with the mallet. What's ironic about this is millions and millions of people wear this shirt and they've never played the game and not even watched one match, but it's all about the image, right? And it was brilliant what he created. So to wrap up the podcast, let's talk about some other fun facts. Polo players must play right-handed. Even if you're naturally left-handed, of course, right? You generally have to hold the mallet in your right hand. Having players swinging from opposite sides would really create dangerous situations. Horses can reach up to 35 miles an hour. They can cover up to 2 miles in a 7-minute chukker. And again, it's such a great word, right? Talk about knowing something trivia-wise, right? What's a quarter called? A chukker. The horses' manes are cut really short and their tails are tied up, right? It's all about preventing the hair from being tangled up with the mallets and throughout the game. You can actually block another player's swing with your mallet. It's called hooking, but there's strict rules about when and how you can do it safely. 2 referees, I mentioned, they ride along during the game, right? And then if they disagree on a call, there's the 3rd official that can settle any kind of disputes. Horses coming into contact with each other, that's part of this sport. In a legal ride-off, horses can come shoulder to shoulder as one rider tries to move the other away from the ball, but the angle in terms of how they come at each other, definitely that's enforced. You can't just smash directly into another horse. And a horse can actually block a ball, right? The rules don't automatically stop play because a ball bounces off a horse and there's no goalie, unlike soccer, unlike hockey. Yeah, the rules dictate that you can't do that, right? You have that line of play. So the defender, that position player number 4, yeah, he's responsible for making sure that ball doesn't go into the goal, but there's no goalie per se. And finally, how about this? Talk about something interesting I never knew. Sylvester Stallone, Rocky, he grew up playing polo. His father was a professional polo player. He never did a movie about polo, but there's a Netflix documentary out there about his life and how polo was so instrumental and so important in his life. And yes, sadly, he did not have a good relationship with his father. So that's something interesting to check out. Never knew that. But hey, this episode, I'd like to do a big shout out to Jenna and her family, big polo family. I've known them for a while. And yeah, I was just talking to her yesterday, catching up. And I was like, yeah, she was telling me all about her son being able to now play polo and how great a sport it is and how much fun it is. Hey, it's a sport that combines the love of outdoors, the love of horses, the love of competition. That's why her family loves it. That's why her family continues to go back throughout the year to go out in that field, compete, have fun. And you know what? This is a sport that is really, like I said, one of the oldest sports ever. It goes back to the origins of men, women fighting on horses. And today, yeah, you can just go out there and enjoy the sport and actually participate in helping clean up the field. Friends, thanks for taking this journey, learning all about Polo. Reach out to us at our new email address. It's OK, that's O, the letter O, the letter K. Let's learn. OK, let's learn podcast at gmail.com. We have a website, okletslearn.com. We are on Facebook, Spotify, X, YouTube, Substack. Love the ratings, love the reviews, and yes, look for the comments in the show notes. You can support the show, be named as a producer on each and every episode. Thank you for listening, and until next time, have fun and keep learning.